Hi everyone, welcome back again. In this video, we are going to understand about the DB context and database configuration. Now, what is DB context? DB context is the bridge between your C# code and the database. Now, it is the core class of entity framework core, and it does three things like holds the DbSet properties on one per table, and manages the database connection, tracks changes to object so it knows what SQL to generate. Now the flow of DB context is like you create or modify objects in your code, then it goes to DB context, tracks the changes, then it goes to DB context, figures out what SQL is needed. Now the SQL is sent to the database and executed, and changes are saved in the database. So this is the main understanding of DB context. Now let's go back to our code and let's start creating our DB context. Alright, for DB context, I'm going to create one file under data folder. So I'll create a file over here and I'll name it as app DbContext. So these are the common practice of naming conventions between the C# code and .NET environment. Now here in this DB context, we are going to call this entity framework core package. So using Microsoft entity framework core, and then I'm going to call using this time for the models product catalog API. This is the namespace we used .models, and then I'm going to create the namespace, which is again product catalog API data. After that, we're going to have this class for app DbContext. So public class app DbContext, and we're going to call this DbContext from the entity framework. And after that, we'll have public app DbContext. This is the constructor we are providing over here, and in this constructor we're going to take DbContext options, and which is again going to be the type of app DbContext, and then options. It is going to take the base of options like this, and this is the end of our constructor. And after that, we'll have this public DbSet, and it will take the product object structure or product type, then products. This is the products table we're going to create in our database. Get and set. Alright, we have configured our app DbContext file. Now it's time to update our app settings.json file. And in this app settings.json file, we need to have this connection string, which is basically which will basically talk to our database and the server and the database. So for that, I'll create the connection string over here. I mean, you can provide anywhere. This is plain JSON object. I'm going to provide connection string. This is the key. Connection strings, and this is again going to be another object. Inside this object, we're going to have default default connection. And here is the main part we are going to implement, the actual connection string, and depending on this it is going to talk to our database and server. So server is our localhost, and the port is 1433. You remember we created this we run this server, and for that we had created one .txt file for mentioning where we mention this port and the username, ID, password, all this. So port is 1433, and then we have the database, and this is going to be our product catalog DB. And user, we selected, we provided user, which is SA, and the password you provided, like your pass, or if you had provided like my password, I provided my password, and then the trust certificate or trust server certificate. Now what is this connection string? If we look at our database server, and if we try to edit this, you can see this is the username and this is the password, and then the server name is localhost, and also we had selected one tick mark, okay, that is trust server certificate. And if we come back to our app settings, we are having all the same key values pair. I mean, it is not like key values like JSON, but we are basically defining, okay, server host, localhost, all these things, and the port also.
Next video will be working with the server service layer and then controller layers. Thank you.